This is a story. This is a story based on the large intestine. Based on the large intestine. By Malaika Bruce, Jenna Vialva, Vera Suklal, Krista Frederick, Rizan Bino, Natasha Sinarine, Jessina Hall, Juna Robinson, and James Howard. By Malaika Bruce, Jenna Vialva, Vera Suklal, Krista Frederick, Rizan Bino, Natasha Sinarine, Jessina Hall, Juna Robinson, and James Howard.
Objectives. Define what is the large intestine. Identify where the large intestine is located. List the parts of the large intestine. Define what is the appendix. Outline 3 functions of the appendix. Explain what is the cecum. Describe 3 functions of the cecum. Define what is the ascendant colon. State 3 functions of the ascendant colon. Define what is the descendant colon. Classify 3 functions of the descendant colon. Define what is the rectum. Detect 2 functions of the rectum. Identify and illustrate 4 illnesses associated with the large intestine. What is the large intestine? The large intestine is the final section of the gastrointestinal tract that performs the vital task of absorbing water and vitamins while converting digested food into feces. Where is the large intestine located? The large intestine consists of the cecum and colon. It begins at the right iliac region of the pelvis, where it continues from the small intestine and continues up the abdomen. Thereafter, it traverses across the width of the abdominal cavity, and then it turns down, continuing to its endpoint at the anus. What are the parts of the large intestine? The cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and appendix. Tissues in the large intestine.
The large intestine is made up of 4 layers. The inner layer, known as the mucosa, is made of simple columnar epithelial tissue. The mucosa of the large intestine is smooth, lacking the villi found in the small intestine. Many mucous glands secrete mucus into the hollow lumen of the large intestine to lubricate its surface and protect it from rough food particles. The submucosa, which supports the other layers of the large intestine. The submucosa surrounds the mucosa with a layer of blood vessels, nerves, and connective tissue. The muscularis layer surrounds the submucosa and contains many layers of visceral muscle cells that contract and move the large intestine. Continuous contraction of smooth muscle bands in the muscularis produces lumpy, pouch-like structures known as haustra in the large intestine. Serosa forms the outermost layer. The serosa is a thin layer of simple squamous epithelial tissue that secretes watery serous fluid to lubricate the surface of the large intestine, protecting it from friction between abdominal organs and the surrounding muscles and bones of the lower torso.
The appendix. It is a blind-ended tube connected to the cecum, from which it develops umbilically.
Functions of the appendix. When the gut is affected by diarrhea or other illness that cleans out the intestines, the good bacteria in the appendix can repopulate the digestive system and keep you healthy. In modern society, less of these good bacteria are needed due to the better hygiene practices, which may explain why the appendix has gained a reputation as a useless organ. Once the bowel contents have left the body, the good bacteria hidden away in the appendix can emerge and repopulate the lining of the intestine, before more harmful bacteria can take up residence.
The cecum. The cecum, a pouch or a large tube-like structure in the lower abdominal cavity. It receives undigested food material from the small intestine and is considered the first region of the large intestine. It is separated from the ileum by the ileocecal valve, which limits the rate of the food passage into the cecum and may help prevent material from returning to the small intestine. Function of the cecum. The main function of the cecum are to absorb fluid and salt that remains after completion of the intestinal digestion and absorption and to mix its contents, which is a lubricating substance, mucus. The internal wall of the cecum composed of a thick mucous membrane through which water and salt are absorbed. Beneath that thin layer is a deep layer muscle tissue that produces chumming and kneading motion.
The ascending colon. The ascending colon. The first segment of the colon, which begins in the right lower quadrant of the abdomen at the cecum and ends at the hepatic flexure in the right upper quadrant of the abdomen, after which point it becomes the transverse colon. Ascending colon functions. The ascending colon is comprised of strong muscles that motor waste products upward and onward out of the body. This digested food matter is known as chyme. Water and nutrients are extracted during this whole process, making overall colon function extremely important to a healthy lifestyle. Two ascending colon functions include absorption of potassium and vitamin K. The transverse colon. Transverse colon. The transverse colon is the longest region of the colon and is located between the ascending colon and the descending colon. Requires a constant supply of oxygenated blood, which comes by way of two arteries. The middle colic artery branches off the superior mesenteric artery, and it services most of this part of the large intestine. 1/3 also receives oxygenated blood from the inferior mesenteric artery. Transverse colon functions. As digestion continues, the ingested matter moves up the ascending colon and into the transverse colon. The transverse section is to help absorb water and electrolytes from the chyme it has received from the small intestine. It helps pass the feces through the anus, where it can ultimately be removed from the body. The descending colon. The descending colon. The third section of the colon, which connects to the horizontal transverse colon. It is the part of the colon that slopes downward straight to the left of the side kidney and the left section of the abdominal wall, called the left hypochondria. Certain coils of small intestine are also located in front of the organ. At the end, it connects to the next portion of colon anatomy, the sigmoid colon. The descending colon functions. Due to its tubular shape, the descending colon is comprised of strong muscles surrounded by the peritoneum, which help it perform its main functions in the overall work of the colon. It primarily serves to absorb water from fecal matter.
It also stores food particles that are to be emptied into the rectum. While working in a downward movement, this organ continues to push the digested waste products, which ultimately enters the sigmoid colon, then the rectum, to be expelled during excretion.
The sigmoid colon. The sigmoid colon is a short curving of the colon just before the rectum. It connects the descending colon to the rectum. The sigmoid colon derives its name from the fact that it is curved on the form of an S. Its size depends upon the amount of waste material in it, but when contracted, its diameter is only about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. The internal surface of the sigmoid colon is similar to that of the rest of the large intestine. The circular muscle structures, the sphincter, at the junction between the sigmoid colon and the rectum keeps material within the colon until it is ready to be passed. The deeper muscle layer of the sigmoid colon is composed of circular muscles and a sheet of longitudinal muscles. The longitudinal muscles are primarily responsible for evacuating waste from this segment. Functions of the sigmoid colon. Fetal material can be stored in the sigmoid colon for 7 hours or more and is usually expelled when new waste material requires entry. The walls of the sigmoid colon are muscular and contract to increase the pressure inside the colon, causing the stools to move into the rectum.
The rectum. The rectum is the lower part of the alimentary canal between the sigmoid flexure of the colon and the anus. Before defecation, all the waste material/feces is transported to rectum. The expansion of the rectal walls causes the stretch receptors within the walls to stimulate the urge to defecate. Functions of the rectum. As being the last part of the digestive tract, the rectum acts as a temporary storage facility for feces/waste material. These feces remain in the rectum until we proceed with defecation, in which through bowel movement they are transferred to anal canal and then outside of the body.
Disorders of the large intestine.
Disorders of the large intestine include colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a malignant tumor arising from the inner wall of the large intestine. Colonic polyp. A colon polyp is a small clump of cells that forms on the lining of the colon. Most colon polyps are harmless, but over time, some colon polyps can develop into colon cancer, which is often fatal when found in its later stages.
Irritable bowel syndrome is a gastrointestinal disorder characterized by the presence of a cluster of symptoms and signs that include cramping, abdominal pain, increased gas, altered bowel habits, food intolerance, and bloating. Hirschsprung's disease is a rare congenital. A person is born with it. Disorder that is caused by absence of nerve cells, ganglion, in the rectum or colon. Usually the problem involves only the bottom portion of the colon, but in some it involves the entire colon or even part of the small intestine.
In conclusion, the large intestine comprises of the second part of the alimentary canal. The large intestine consists of the cecum and colon. It begins at the right iliac region of the pelvis, where it continues from the small intestine and continues up the abdomen. Thereafter, it transverses across the width of the abdominal cavity, then it turns down, continuing to its endpoint at the anus.